Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us and tuning into our session. It's called Utilizing Webhooks to Ensure Mission Critical Operations through Cityworks. My name is Greg Stevenson. I work with Timmons Group. We're fortunate enough to be working with Spotsylvania County on quite a few exciting things. One of these is this webhook project they're about to talk to you guys about.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. I'm Eric Ray from Spotsylvania County. I serve as a division director for technical services for community operations. Under community operations, I serve public works, public utilities, and parks and recreation.
Thanks, Eric. And I'm Ethan Roos. I'm a Cityworks analyst with Timmons Group, and I've had the pleasure of working with Eric in Spotsylvania County for the past 3 years or so, since 2018.
All right. Thanks, guys. Just real quick, wanted to kind of give a few background nuggets on Timmons Group. We're an award-winning Esri business partner. We just received gold status with Esri, so we've been pretty excited about that. We've been working with Cityworks since 2013, where we were a platinum implementation partner. We've done over 105 Cityworks projects throughout North America. We're also one of 2 implementation partners that's also a Cityworks strategic development partner. And we got about 22 full-time people that are really fully dedicated to Cityworks and implementing it, supporting it, designing integrations, doing everything kind of Cityworks related. One cool thing about Timmons Group is we have a dedicated client support program, which I manage. And we've been lucky enough to work with Spotsylvania and Eric through that program. And actually the project that we're going to talk about today was done under that program in one of our on-call contracts with the county.
All right. Thanks, Greg. So a little bit about Spotsylvania County. It's got a weird name to it sometimes, but we're conveniently located between Washington, D.C. and the city of Richmond in the state of Virginia. We serve our customer base with water and sewer utilities. We've been a Cityworks customer since 2018. We have about 33,000 customers. We have 2 water plants that are provided water from 3 reservoirs. We have 3 sewer treatment plants and about 550 miles of sanitary sewer mains, and very similarly 600 miles of water mains throughout the county or service area. All right, so why webhooks? Well, we needed an automated way to do certain things when certain criteria have been met. So with this, we do for any new business or new residential home that gets completed, we have to do a lateral line inspection to ensure that the lateral line can accept flow coming from that business or residence. So as you can see here to the right, some of the lateral defects there that are selectable. We get selected. We do the total pipe footage, and we also use that to invoice the customer if there's anything wrong with the lateral, who is the responsible party, and then any comments. And also, our sanitary sewer crews are trained on how to inspect the meter barrel to ensure that it can accept a water meter from the county. So, they look at the barrel and the collar. Is a lid present? Proper clearances are met for the yoke and the angle valve. Any other clearances, so of course, like the visible bypass, the branch valve is accessible. And then again, who is responsible for making those corrections? Once that's done and this inspection passes, webhooks are used to create a meter set work order, which goes to our metering division here at the utility. Moving on to the service requests for turn water on or turn meter off, turn meter on. Our customer service department, they don't have the permissions to create work orders. And so what we use webhooks for in this case is when the service requests are created, It'll also create a related meter on or meter off work order for move-ins, move-outs, or new customers. All right, Ethan.
Thanks, Eric. I'll get into a little bit of the technical side of how these webhooks were set up for Spotsylvania County. But before I do that, what are webhooks? A webhook is a way to automatically notify the Cityworks server that action has occurred, and then to send that information for a Cityworks work activity to be created. So in order for webhooks to be successfully processed on your site, you need to be licensed for webhooks as well as AMS and or PLO. And this diagram on the right side of the screen is kind of like the basic way that a webhook travels through Cityworks for work activity updates or creation. So an action needs to take place first in order to trigger a webhook. So whether that's a work order being created, service request being created, or an inspection status changing to pass, like Erica just mentioned, any of those can take place. And after that webhook is then triggered, which creates a data packet. And from there, the message queue, which will be covered on the next slide, or the API processes that data packet. And the webhook then sends that data to the application and then does its processing and makes the final API call to perform the final finishing touches for that webhook and complete the necessary items for the result you expected. So in order for webhooks to be able to communicate with your site, you need to install a message queue service, which Cityworks provides. What this does, it allows you to configure, test, and manage all of your Cityworks server connections and to query new message queue objects from. So this service can be installed on any server you want, as long as that server can connect to the one that Cityworks is installed on. And once this is installed, it will then write that server configuration to a JSON file, which then can be opened by clicking File and then updated within the installer. So just talking a little bit about the fields that are required to be set up within this installer. You would just need to enter a server nickname, per se. It's not the exact server name, but just some unique identifier to help you distinguish your different connections. And then from there, you would enter your server address. So that's primarily like the leading bit of your Cityworks URL. So it'll have then your server and site name, and then you need to enter your username and password. And that can just be your CW admin credentials to access Cityworks or any other credentials you use to access Cityworks. An interval, that's just the interval that's measured in minutes that the message queue will sweep for new webhooks that have been triggered in message queue items. So you can see on the screen it defaults to 60, but it can be any minute amount in between 1 and 60 hours to keep. That's just the amount of time the message queue will keep any process objects in its local memory. And the number to process is the maximum number of objects that you want the message queue to process on a single query. And then in order to enable this service, you just need to check that enable checkbox. So once all that's filled out, you can click test and save configuration, and you should expect to see hopefully a success message like you see on the left side of the screen. And once you see that message, you can go ahead and click install to install this service on your server. So the next step would be to go into Action Manager and create your action template. And what this template that you see on the right-hand side of the screen is, it will create a meter on work order from that service request that you see. So the source would be service request, since that is the trigger. The creation of the service request needs to then trigger that work order. And then description, that's just a unique name for this action template. So we just named this one Turn Water on Work Order, since that's the work order that will be created. And the URL below is the API call needed to create this work order. So you can see the root is work order and then create from service request. So it's going to create that work order and relate it to its service request. And to bypass the interval from the message queue service, I just clicked urgent, so it will dynamically create that work order as the service request is created, and it won't take anywhere between a minute and an hour to create. It will be there right for the users when that is triggered. So moving down, you have two options. You can either use simple, and that would then just have any predefined parameters, but custom is what we chose to use, so we could have our user define parameters and tell it what we wanted it to do and what work order template we wanted it to create. So you can see that we have that query and code in the template box. What that is saying is that it wants to use the request ID from the service request that this is being triggered off of. So the one in the double brackets, it's just going to take that request ID from the one that's being created. So it's related, that service request, to the work order then, since you don't want to have to update this each time you make a service request. You want it to be able to pull the latest ID into that field. And then from there, the other parameters are just the work order template ID of that turn water on work order. So it's 359, and then the entity type of that work order, which was water meter box. And the last bit for token, that's just taking the token from the message queue user above and using that token of that user. I just chose to use message queue instead of CW admin, just out of recommendations of Cityworks. So like I said before on the previous slide, that URL, if you did enter your host and your site name and /services, it would take you to all of the Cityworks API calls that can be used to trigger any activity updates or webhooks. So it's like you see on the right, that's just work orders, but you can choose from service requests, inspections, anything on the PLL side, storeroom. There's a plethora of options that you can choose from to help automate any work orders, but or any work activities. But yeah, for Spotsylvania, we found it the most helpful to create work orders from service requests and then work orders based on that inspection being passed. So after you have your action template created, you can go ahead and create your action event. And what this will do is, this is where you link your event to your template. So it's just linking these two together. So in action templates is the action called when the event is triggered. So you choose your action template. So in this case, we would want turn water on work order, since we just created that. And then you can select your service request template or any other work activity template that you want this to be applied to. So we wanted the meter on request to trigger the turn water on work order. So that's why that request was chosen. And then below, you can think of conditions like a where statement of a SQL query. It just further refines and breaks down your parameters. So we wanted it to be triggered where the status was equal open on that work order, since it's on the request, since it's the creation of it. So we did service request status is equal to open in order to achieve that. So your final product, once we had this configured in production, it created this turn water meter on work order. And once that service request was created, it would then appear automatically in this work activities panel on your service request. So you can see that after creating that service request, we had work order ID 6166969 created. And then below, we have our results from our message queue. If we ran a search in that in Cityworks, you would you see two results on my screen, and the first one is a standard result that's passed back from Cityworks if you just click test on that action event in Action Manager. So then just say it can't find work order ID with ID of null, since it's just a test and it's not actually creating anything, creating a work activity. But the one below that is what you should see if your webhook did create your activity so successfully. So you can see here that we have our work order ID of the one that's created, as well as a lot of other database fields, as well as like the apply to entity and just any other information. So you should see ID as well as populated information if it ran successfully. So on the final product side, this is what the user will see on for Spotsylvania. We created an inbox in Cityworks for them, where all of these open water meter install work orders will go. So these will be routed initially to the crew lead of their metering services, where he will then enter their custom fields on that newly created work order. And then once he has done that, he will then route it back to customer service to initialize an AMI by assigning their cell number. So once that has been assigned and initialized an AMI, that work order can be closed. So so this inbox will just help them organize all their work just for their daily workflow for these water meters, which we helped develop for them, and just greatly make their workflow a lot easier and less clicks in Cityworks for them.
Awesome. Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, Eric. So yeah, as you can see, Cityworks has a very cool tool to automate some of its functionality. I think Webhooks is it's easily configured, and it's something that can help a lot of organizations just make sure nothing really falls through the cracks, especially these important things such as setting up a new water meter. So we hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit from us today. If you have any questions, our contact information is there on the screen. feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We hope to hear from you. And again, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.